Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best top laners for Season 5 patch 5.6, so let's get right into the video. First up on my list, I have Kenan. Pros to Kenan are he is a very strong laner, in my opinion, because he's ranged, so he can poke his opponents down with his auto attacks, and then his Q also brings for some pretty nice poke as well. He's also got an insane late game. If you can get to full build on Kenan, and you can get a good channeled ultimate off in a team fight, it's going to do a ton of damage, and you're just going to be able to burst down those squishy targets pretty much instantly. He is a great team fighter because of all of his AoE damage, and his passive is also very strong, which gives him the stun once he gets 3 procs off on the opponents, and he also has great mobility because of his E. A con to Kenan is that he is fairly weak if he does fall behind because he is very item dependent. Next up on my list, I have Wukong. So with there being a lot more melee or melee top laners being played in the top lane, I think that Wukong is a stronger pick now because he did struggle against the ranged champions when they were in meta and the champions that could poke him down, but because you're not seeing as many of those champions anymore, he can do better in the laning phase. He won't get denied as much as he used to, and then once you get to mid game and you start team fighting as Wukong, his ultimate is just so strong and it can single-handedly win you games. He can build tanky and still do a lot of damage. He only needs like 1 or 2 damage items, and then if you're even with the opponents, then you can end up going full tank, or if you're really far ahead, then you can build full damage Wukong, and holy crap, full damage Wukong does a ton of damage. He also has pretty sneaky engages with his W, and he snowballs really hard. Some cons to Wukong are he does have some weaker lane matchups, and he also doesn't have any escapes, and by escapes I mean he doesn't have any way of like dashing over a wall or anything, so if he does get caught out, he can juke with his W, but that's not the most reliable way to escape, so yeah, he doesn't have any escapes, which makes him a little bit weaker when he does fall behind and if he does get caught out. Next up on my list, I have Sion. So right now, Sion, in my opinion, is one of the strongest laners in the top lane. He is a very strong lane bully. He's got insane CC with his E, his Q, and his ultimate. He's also a very strong roamer. Once you win your lane as Sion, which you pretty much can do every single game as long as you know how to play Sion correctly, once you do hit level 6, you can look for a lane gank down bot lane with your ultimate, and you're pretty much guaranteed to at least pick up the enemy's flash down bot lane because his ultimate just provides a ton of CC and a ton of mobility, and it's really hard for the enemies to not get hit by your ultimate when you are lane ganking down bot lane. He's also super tanky. I'd recommend going full tank on Sion. You can go like 1 or 2 AD items on Sion, but the reason why I would recommend going full tank is because you want to be that front line in team fights going in with your ultimate, and if you don't have those tank stats, then you're just gonna get blown up really quickly before you can get your CC off in team fights. And he actually does have surprising damage. You don't even need to build any AD items on Sion because the base damages on his abilities are really high, and he's also got pretty solid wave clear with his E and his Q. Some cons to Sion are he doesn't have any mobility pre-6, so if you're pushing out in lane as Sion before you have your ultimate, I'd make sure you have a ward down or you're being careful because you can end up getting ganked and lose your lane advantage if you do push out a lane too far. And his ult is weaker against mobile champions, so if the enemy team has someone like an Ezreal, if they have like a Nidalee, champions that can jump away from your ultimate really easily, it might not be the best option to pick Sion in that game. So next up I have Irelia. Even though Irelia did get that nerf to her E, I still think she is a really strong top laner right now. She's one of the best duelists in the game because of her E and because of all the damage she has. She's also got a great mid-game power spike because once she picks up the Trinity Force, she does a ton of damage, and she can pretty much 1v1 any champion in the game. Her E, like I said, is very strong. You can pretty much 100 to 0 any squishy in the game come full build on Irelia once you get to late game, because the E stuns them for such a long duration, and most of the time you're going to be able to burst them down before they even get out of the stun. She's also got true damage on her W, and she's a bruiser as well, so she can build, I like to build 1 damage item on Irelia, which is Trinity Force, and then I just like to go full tank because I just find you don't need any more damage on her. Cons to Irelia are she does have a weaker early game against some lane opponents, and she also does not have any escapes. So number 1 on my list for patch 5.6 is Hecarim. I've been playing quite a bit of Hecarim lately, and he's just such a strong teamfighting champion. He's also got a pretty good laning phase, unless he's going up against some ranged top laner. He's got really strong mobility with his E and his ultimate, and a big pro to him as well is that he can run Ignite, which pretty much no other top laner in the game is running right now. The normal summoner spells to run is just teleport and flash on your top laner, but the fact that Hecarim can run Ignite and teleport is just really strong. It brings for so much kill pressure in lane. He's got a very strong mid game as well, because once he picks up that Trinity Force, he starts to do a ton of damage, and his TP ganks are absolutely insane as well. If he rushes the early home guards and he goes for a TP gank down bot lane once he gets level 6, he's pretty much guaranteed a kill. And he can build tanky and still do a ton of damage. I like to go Trinity Force and Youmuu's Ghostblade on Hecarim and then go full tank after that. And he's very strong against immobile enemies. Like, if you're playing against a Jinx, then it's just going to be really easy for you to just ult onto the Jinx in teamfights, and it's going to be really hard for her to end up staying alive in teamfights. So I would definitely recommend picking Hecarim into immobile enemy team comps. A con to Hecarim are he does have some weaker lane matchups. So first up on the honorable mentions, I have Maokai. I've been playing quite a bit of Maokai lately as well, and the reason why I think he is a pretty strong pick right now is because of the Righteous Glory item. The item just works so well on him. It gives him health stats, it gives him mana, and the active on it is just really good for enabling him to get into the back line and use his W on the priority target. So I would definitely recommend picking up Maokai. He's a fairly solid laner as well. So if you're looking for a strong teamfighting champion and a fairly solid laner, I would definitely recommend picking up Maokai. Next up, I have Chogath. So Chogath, you might be surprised about this pick, but he is a really strong laner because of his passive. He can just sustain in lane for such a long time, and it's really hard to bully the Chogath out of lane. And if you do build a few AP items on him, he actually does a ton of damage, and the CC from his silence and his Q are really strong as well for zoning in teamfights, and his silence is just really good. If you can get a multi-man silence off in a teamfight with your W, it's not going to guarantee you the chances of winning the teamfight, but it's going to definitely increase your chances of winning the fight. Next up, I have Riven. So although Riven does have quite a few weaker lane matchups, if she can get past the laning phase, or if she can end up getting a kill in the laning phase, she snowballs insanely hard, and she does a ton of damage come mid game. So if you are a Riven main, or you do know how to play Riven and you can avoid her weaker matchups, then I would definitely recommend playing her. Next up, I have Nasus. So Nasus does have some weaker lane matchups like Riven, but if you can find that matchup and you can get your Q stacking, he does a ton of damage come late game because of his Q, and his W is also very strong. If you can get that off on the enemy AD carry in a team fight, it's basically going to enable them to do nothing if you do get your Wither off on them, because they're going to be slowed, their attack speed is going to be reduced, so it's just a really strong ability, and it's on a pretty short cooldown as well. So if you do find that right matchup, I would definitely recommend playing Nasus. Next up, I have Rumble. So Rumble is harder to play in my opinion, one of the harder top laners, because his ultimate is hard to land, and it's definitely one of the, like, you want to land your ultimate on Rumble obviously because it's such a game-changing ability, but if you don't practice Rumble enough, or you just haven't played Rumble, then I wouldn't recommend picking him up because his ultimate is harder to land, and if you don't land it, then you're missing out on a lot of his kit. But if you are a Rumble main or you do know how to play him, then he is a very strong pick if you can get your ultimate off in team fights. So next up I have Swain. Swain is one of the most underrated top laners in the game in my opinion. He does have a very strong laning phase because he is ranged and he can just farm up really easily against the melee or melee top laners, and he does have a very strong late game as well. If the enemies don't have a champion who is going to build Morellonomicon, then I would definitely recommend picking up Swain. And I also want to mention Lissandra. She is a pretty good pick still in my opinion. Her Q did get nerfed, but she does have a very strong team fight. She's also a very strong laner as well, so even though Lissandra's Q did get nerfed, I still think she is a fairly strong pick. So that is all for the video, guys. If you enjoyed, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.